Hey folks, welcome back to the Change Physician Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, with my unable to be described with words co-host. There's no words that are optimized to fit her appropriately at this moment of time, but that is Dr. Melissa Cady. And Dr. Cady, how are you today? I'm speechless.
Oh, well, you actually used the able word in there, unable to describe.
Unable.
So
Need
you
to
still
build up my
somehow
ability.
squeezed in an able. But I'm feeling very able today. And I'm thinking of all these words in my head because we just, had this episode not too long ago with all these able words, but I'm doing great. Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, this is what I want to talk about today is time. Time, folks.
We want more of it.
We want more of it. But then to root it here is the quote: time is the most valuable thing you have. Be sure to spend it well. And that is attributed to Lyndon Johnson, past president Lyndon Johnson, who was apparently an amazing politician, very foul-mouthed politician, but supposed to be very, very effective at managing politics. But what I liked about this particular quote is ultimately, if you think about the currency of which all of us spend, no matter what your background, culture, ethnicity, geographic location, anything, the one thing that is common to all of us is time. And that one particular currency, each of us is given a very finite amount.
Mm-hmm.
Each of us spends it daily, and no one can get necessarily any more. And we can do some extension and things like that, but you're really looking about 100 years. That's the same pocket that everybody got, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes left. Oh, let's just say 80. All right, let's just say 80 years. So what are you doing with your time? And before I do my big old long thing, I want to ask you what are your thoughts about time and time as currency, and has your perspectives about time changed since you were young, when we were not aware of the importance of time so much?
Yeah. So it's funny. I just thought of just showing there's, I was born in 1974, if you can see that. And there's a big hyphen, and I don't know the date, and you don't know how long your hyphen is. And that is the time that we're given. And, I think of, I can't remember exactly what your question was, but I just started thinking I wanted to mention that.
Your perspectives of time.
Yeah. So you want it to be of quality. So I find that people underestimate the quality of your health, because regardless of your time, if your health is not great, it's hard to really fully live and do the things you want to do when you want to do them. So
when did you become aware of that, though? When is your perspective? When were you becoming aware of the importance of time?
in the last 10 years, probably. I probably, if you asked me that in my 20s, I'd probably say I agree, but I don't think I fully, genuinely understood that until I realized I spent 13 years. It always seems like my past comes up in these episodes. But you start thinking how much time you spent doing something that maybe wasn't as meaningful, or it didn't grow in a positive way, that you think, God, did I waste all my time? And so I think that's, in my mid 30s, I started feeling this sense of, and then of course as a female, you think, oh, my my biological clock's ticking. Do I want to have a child or not? And you realize how fast life has gone by already. And then you start thinking, I need to be authentically me. Who the hell is that? What do I want my life to consist of? So I think the whole time thing, it really, I think it hits you in certain circumstances like what I just described. But I do find it interesting when you think about how time flies, that kind of feeling. You think of a 5-year-old, and 1 year is like 20% of their life. But you have a 50-year-old, and I got to do like math here. Was it 2%? 1 year. Did
Very
I do that
little.
right? Did I do that right?
It's about 2%. Yeah.
Yeah. So the percentage wise of your life and what's gone by, a whole year for a child just seems like a lot more. But as we get older, it seems like these years just keep fleeting faster and faster. And I think our perspective shifts. And of course, we've been on Earth longer. If we are fortunate enough to, live more years.
Well, that was the first time I became aware of time, I would say.
50?
No,
Okay.
I'm not 50 yet,
I know.
but when I was little.
Oh, really?
When I was little, like I remember consciously thinking about how long the school year was, because it was this major chunk of your life. And I can also remember very consciously the night before school started crying in my bed because I knew there was this big old long, and this is sad because there's said so much about the school system that I wasn't excited about school, but it would be, you had this big, you had this massive, huge chunk of time that was school before you got that big summer vacation kind of thing. And then I remember, as you talk about, as your time perspective starts to shift as you get more time under your belt. I remember being 18, and I may have mentioned this on the podcast before, but just recognizing how fast time then seemed to be accelerating, because I remembered those early episodes when I was little and being sad or literally like my birthday. I remember one time I must have been crying at night all these times, and oh my God, it's going to be a whole another year until I have a birthday, and being sad. And then being 18 and talking to my grandmother and just going, I can't believe how fast time goes. And she looking at me in deadpan and just goes, you have no idea. And she was absolutely right. So it's interesting how you brought up this perspective shift is in from the neuroscience perspective, it does, because we have each day, each year from a certain point has all those past memories and experiences now that are full. And so it starts to accelerate. And, now a day doesn't seem like anything. 2 days doesn't sound like much. A year in some situations doesn't seem like much at all. While if you're talking to a young child and you're saying, oh, well, you don't have to wait a week. They're like, oh my God, that's like, and because it is for them, that 1 week is a huge chunk of time.
Yeah.
But returning to the importance of, once we become aware of that perspective, when you were becoming a little bit more aware, have you done anything to optimize time or find ways to appreciate the currency that is time?
Yeah. So, well, one of the things when I wrote a book, I didn't want to wait any longer. I wanted to act on it instead of okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then another year goes by and then, so I finally did it. Not to say I don't have another book in my head, but now I kind of know what's involved. And it's just a lot more sacrifice than I had realized initially. But I think I'm so used to plugging in my calendar of tasks and to do. And it's like for so long, I was so used to being so busy in, medical school and our training and your time is always occupied. So I think I felt like I was scheduling to constantly occupy my time, not realizing that you put a certain kind of level of stress on yourself. You don't think of it that way. It makes you feel, I don't know, some purpose and direction and structure or whatnot. But now I'm trying to purposely create time in my schedule of nothing, nothing that is required. Now, there might be little hobby things I want to do. I might schedule that in, but it's not as obligatory towards other people. It's reframing that my calendar is involving things for myself. So whether it's time in the sunroom reading, just being outside in the garden, doing things that kind of shift away. Because the one thing I did think about a lot over the past 5 to 10 years is when I talk to people who've retired and they feel like there's certain ones that were very intentional with their time for retirement, even leading up into it. And so the ones that weren't, and they just reached this goal of retirement and they just had no plan, they literally were miserable. And I would inquire, I would even, so how have you enjoyed your retirement? What are you doing? And you realize these people don't realize how their job gave them certain things that they haven't put into their own personal life, like structure, sense of meaning, companionship or relationships, variety, something to get up and get dressed for, to just get out of the house, like all of these things. So I think I've recognized through observing that time is precious, and if you don't have anything else that you enjoy doing with the time you have, then I mean you really don't know what you enjoy unless you just start dabbling in things and start, even if you don't have set hobbies, you've got to kind of create and explore. So giving that a little bit of exploration. So being intentional with my time, and trying to find the things that bring me joy, is where I've shifted.
Well, and you have the key word there is intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
Really is being much more intentional about the time you have. So it sounds like, because there's different types of people, obviously, and it sounds like you're one of the people who you will tend to overschedule. So
Yes.
you're now spending time either for other people's expectations and or things that are outside things, where you're actually now intentional about carving out that resource for you, those blocks of time. And then there are some of us, like me, raise my hand, who probably needs to do more scheduling and be more intentional about the use of time itself. Like, because it is my default is to just let time go by. Like, and part of it is like, because my brain's way out in the future and are living in my skull so much. But it makes me think about, I'm going to call it Cuccaro's theory of the orange. Of I'm a weird person, I guess, now talking to you, because it's like I've been thinking about time for a long time. And this is again back in like high school, and I kind of visualized time as an orange, and every day you got an orange.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it was like your life is an orange, and every day you got a slice of that orange. Mm-hmm. That slice of orange you are going to have no matter what occurred that day. So what you did in that day was how much of that orange slice you ate. Mm-hmm. So there were days that you may only got a couple of little pieces of that orange slice, and there are other days that you may have really just dove in and ate the whole slice. But recognizing how important it was, well, what did you do that day? Did you actually enjoy that slice of orange? Or did you just kind of nibble on it and then throw most of it away, and you'll never get it back again? It sort of makes sense what I'm saying, is because if you're, you have days that we I hate, and I hate this word now because it has huge connotations, but kill time, which is kind of true, right? Yeah. When you're doing these empty, dead activities that serve no purpose, that when you're through with them, you probably might not be, you're not proud about it. You may not be satisfied with it. And again, I think for some of us who don't schedule as much as you, that's a really easy thing to do. Versus in some scenarios, it may be easier if you are busy to then be more intentional about the time that you have. And I think back to an internship and fellowship and residency. So my wife and I are both physicians. We were both in residency. We both had, we had small kids. And one of the things, for whatever reason, that we did early on was we made really damn sure, like as soon as the academic year would open up, we would schedule our vacations like this. Like within the first month, we had that year's vacations planned out. Mm-hmm. And while we were, all our other time was being spent on many different things, what that made us do is be very, very intentional about the time we had off. And then once we suddenly had more time, i.e., there wasn't this external force telling you how you were going to spend your life currency. It became very easy to slack off and become less intentional. Mm-hmm. And if you're a spur of the moment person, maybe that works well, but I am not a spur of the moment person. Mm-hmm. So I wish I had a little bit more of your scheduling thing, because I find myself on the other end. It's very easy for me to let that slice of orange slip away with very little on it.
Yeah. it's interesting. When you talked about the orange thing, I actually thought about, okay, do you actually, like you said, nibble on it or whatnot? I think I want to learn how to savor it versus gobble it up. Like,
That's a, yeah.
you know, like slowing down time during the day in order to really appreciate. Um, I think that's something that I had not done in the past, and I think many other people that are busy, and you know, I don't have children to keep me distracted and busy as well, which I know bring joy in another way. Um, but sometimes when you're in survival mode, the days just slip by, and you feel like you're gobbling up everything, and you wonder how much you know you really savored because you're just so busy. So I feel like there's a lot of room for any of us to just slow down, take a deep breath, even if it's 5 seconds. You know, so speaking of what can you do in light of time being the most valuable thing, obviously trying to take care of your health is an important part. Um, you know, just being intentional and aware and slow down and take a deep breath, or noticing nature, or noticing your child, you know, doing something very kind to another child, or, you know, just slowing it down versus us being stressed out by the next thing we need to get done or get to. Um, yeah, I think that's part of where some of us can work on, because I think it's human to, you know, just survive when our lives get really busy, and sometimes it requires being intentional about changing. You know, maybe it's not being in the job you're in, or, you know, there's so many different ways of, or in a toxic environment, like changing the things that can help you enjoy your time and create it in a way that brings the most joy, and thinking of long term, like, do I still want to be doing this in, you know, 5 years? um you know, all those things.
And there's so much to this. Actually, you could almost break this down into so
Mm-hmm.
many aspects, because this is kind of one of the core things, I think, when it comes to life strategies,
Mm-hmm.
is time mastery in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ways. And time mastery in a way of the past perspectives, making sure that those are positive and memorable, so that you can regrow, you can have those and reflect on them, because that's a huge sense of who we are, is having those past moments. How do we intentionally create those moments with the awareness that we're going to utilize them in the future? You have the time perspective of the present moment, where you kind of mentioned where being more mindful, so we're not gobbling that orange slice, but savoring it, maybe, you know, just putting it on your mouth and savoring those pieces as they come. And then we can never, you know, the tricky part is to not live so far in the future,
Mm-hmm.
where now we're spending today's oranges on this anticipatory element of what the future may bring. And we've talked about that before, is you know, if you are not intentional, so you say that is, if you are not working on the now, that you may end up in the future, and you're going to be in the same place that you are today, still
Mm-hmm.
spending, or I should say, still neglecting today's orange slices, with this anticipation that somehow the future orange slice is going to taste better,
Yeah.
without having any guarantee you're going to have an orange slice in the future. Um, so, you know, it just kind of sums up so many different things. Also, is, are you investing the time you're spending today? Are you spending the time that you had today? Are you investing your actions in things that are also going to provide you joy in the future? Or, again, I'm raising my hand, you're guilty. Are you sitting on the couch wasting it with something stupid, like some dumb app game thing that no one cares about? You're doing it, and you're like, I don't even care what's going to happen with this, 10 minutes ago. Why am I killing time with this thing when I could be investing time in something else?
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, I think we could spend a lot of time on this thing, but I want to we could spend a lot of, we can be either spending or investing a lot of our time on this for the listeners, and the listeners would be spending or investing a lot of time listening to us. But to make this more of an investment for them, if you had to pick, say, one or two of your optimal time strategies, what would your time strategies be that the listeners can adapt? And then while you're trying to do that, I'll try to think of mine, since this obviously
Yeah.
is an issue I struggle with all the time.
Well, this is the first thing that came to mind, and I was going to say it anyway, is as a physician, there's a lot you do in educating patients. And for me, a big time saver, not necessarily completely full on time spent with the patient, but a more enjoyable and more interactive type of engagement is during my anesthesia consults or pre-ops that I do online. And I've pre-recorded, they're 7 to 9 minutes long, and they're the anesthesia play-by-play. So essentially everything you try to inform them of what's going to happen from the moment they get there, the day of surgery, till when they leave. I've realized that that's very draining to do that 6 or 8 times in a row, and on the same day, which sometimes my consult days are like that. And so you can free up your time by doing this miraculous thing called recording yourself and sending them a link the day before, which also saves you time because it serves as a reminder for the next day. So if you can be strategic, intentional, put a little bit of investment of recording yourself, and it wasn't the perfect recording visually, it was just on Zoom to myself, and you just send a link, they're so appreciative of it. It makes your life better. It saves you a lot of time and energy and words, and you just get straight to the heart of the matter of any questions or anything that's relevant to that patient. And they can also watch it again later if they forgot, or they can share it with a loved one or their family member. So creating efficiencies within your own business, and taking advantage of technology, and you don't have to have it perfect because it's all about just the content. It's not about your necessarily your image in most cases. I mean, you can make a pretty good one off your iPhone if you need to. So that's my most recent time strategy that I'm absolutely, I keep evolving my systems that I have in place, and that one has been extremely helpful. And like I said, it's a good way to, I really hadn't sent reminders, but sometimes they forget, and then you're sitting there waiting, you're wasting your time because they didn't show up. So anyway, those kind of systems in place can be helpful.
Well, and I think that's a perfect example of investing time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's the recognition of things that you're continually spending your time currency on, that you're spending that time currency and it is no longer providing value to you because you're finding it draining.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you find that it's a repetitive event over and over again, you're leveraging technology in such a way now to reclaim that currency back. So I think that's absolutely brilliant. And you can do it outside of things like pre-ops. You can do it for many, many different aspects of your life. It's just going to take a little bit of, it just requires some ability to kind of see what those actions are. Makes me want to go back and start like reflecting on my day-to-day things. What am I spending a lot of time on that I don't enjoy? I'm gonna shift it. My recommendation for the listeners would be this, and this is going to come back to the experiences that we had in residency and fellowship. When we had no time, you had to then be strategic about your time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm still working on this now, but I do think you want to have some flexibility so that you can do things, say at the last moment. I think that's, if you can do that, that's great. But if you look at the year and now start to intentionally schedule specific events, i.e., you should specifically and intentionally be scheduling at least 1 to 2 to potentially 3 of your vacations months and months in advance. And the reason for that is not just because of your schedule and booking patients or doing anything else like that. Is because once you have that time on the books, what you have now done is you increase the anticipation for it. Mm-hmm. And so when we have a future event that we are looking forward to, now while all that time up until that event becomes a pleasurable activity that we're investing our currency in, because you have the anticipation of the travel, maybe the anticipation of what you're going to do, you have the excitement of who you're going to be with. Mm-hmm. So much so that now you are when the vacation occurs, you not only have the memories that are made in that moment in time, but you've actually optimized that vacation because of all the time frame that you are investing before it with that eager anticipation. So mm-hmm. now we're kind of playing with your future oriented time perspective and pulling it into a present moment, even though that present moment is far out. So I would really, really recommend people to, and if there's actually some research on this, but try it. Mm-hmm. Schedule your vacation out like most of us have done, but now be very intentional about anticipating it. So looking, oh, I can't wait till next month. Oh, I can't wait till next week. Oh, I can't wait till tomorrow. And just see how that changes that level of enjoyment and how it kind of in some ways stretches out your time currency, because now you're optimizing that future rather than just kind of being more reactionary with it.
Totally agree. I think both these recommendations, I think, I think efficiencies within the work and the day-to-day life, and creating the openings for not always working is a nice blend of recommendations. And if it's okay with you, I'll take us out.
Take us out. Take us out.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining the Change Physician podcast. I am Melissa Cady, the Challenge Doctor, with my awesome co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro out of Oregon. And, make sure to check out thechangephysician.com, because we'd love you to be part of the community, whether you're a physician or a physician ally. And feel free to comment, rate, review on any of the podcast venues. We'd love to get some feedback and respond back to you. Until next time, we look forward to chatting with you soon.
Take care, folks.